John, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what's happening because it seems as though there are quite a significant number of junior miners on stock exchanges in Canada, particularly on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Does this mean that it's, just take us through why the attraction to coming to list in Canada, particularly for African companies?
Well, yes, and I think part of the reason is that there's a real appetite for early stage ventures in Canada. There are a large number of investors. There's a large number of technical people to review the projects. There's a large number of advisors that are very experienced. So there's a collection of people that come together and make Canada very appealing. I think in previous cycles, there's been a lot of competition from the JSE and from Australia and to some degree from London. And that's come back, but certainly Canada's had a big lead. And I think something like 60 or 70% of the mining projects in the world have been financed on the Toronto Stock Exchange.
Why that lead, John? Why Canada doing so well? You were talking about your competitors. Why Canada seeming to take the lead there?
It's more, I think partially the combination of people, as I mentioned, and partially just that there wasn't the risk appetite at the time in Australia, and to some degree in South Africa there was less demand, I think partially because they really hadn't had a developed junior mining sector. They had a number of very powerful mining houses, and at the time, early in the cycle, before there were reforms to the mining laws, there was people were able to hold on to properties for a long time. I mean, the junior mining sector really revolves around people raising money, spending a lot of money to try and develop a resource, and then and creating value and either selling the company or creating a new mining house. And there just wasn't that history in the JSE.
Let's talk a little bit about that risk appetite, because Africa, we were talking before about some of the issues that have been coming up in Africa. You were saying that before it used to be that political instability, not such a big issue. Now investors are really beginning to take note of that. What has changed?
Well, I think there's been a few situations, and obviously the most notable one has been in the Congo, where companies, for a variety of reasons, have lost properties. And I think early in the cycle, investors were there was such demand that investors were just focused on whether the project itself had merit. And now it's kind of a two-step. You need to show that you have a very good, very prospective project, but you also need to show that the jurisdiction that you're involved in is very welcoming to mining. And I think a few years ago, I think all of the African governments were saying the right things, but we've seen in the last couple of years that some of them have acted in a way that hasn't been favorable to the mining companies. So investors, once bitten, twice shy, are now looking very carefully at which jurisdictions are involved.
Let's talk a little bit about regulation. You were saying that in some cases, the regulation and not knowing exactly what is going to happen. You gave a few examples of some countries where that has been an issue. In South Africa, we've been talking about taxes. There was that debate about nationalization, which has been sort of set aside now. How much does that weigh on the investor's mind when they're wanting to put money into these companies?
Well, by its nature, mining is high risk, so people accept a certain amount of risk just with the project and with the actual companies. But they're now looking at, it's become more important because in the Congo, as I mentioned, and in other places, there have been some surprises. And what the market doesn't like is surprises. So in situations where there's, say, a change of government and the opposition party has said credibly what their platform is, and there's some lead time, and maybe when the new government comes in, they talk to the mining companies before they do anything precipitous. I think investors and mining companies are quite used to that, and one of the things in developing a mining project is that by its nature, you're going to be there for many years, and there's going to be some changes. So as long as there's consultation before major changes are made, I think investors are more or less comfortable. It's when they get the overnight surprises that really changes things and upsets.
John, I would imagine this taking a company public is very, very complex. But just if you were to look at some of the key things that you would look at, you were saying that a company needs to weigh the risks and the opportunities of going public. So what are the key things that you would look at when you're advising companies going forward?
Well, of course, the first thing we look at is the merits of the project itself, and that really relates to getting an independent technical report on the project. After that, we really look at management and what their track record is, and certainly, obviously, if somebody's had taken a junior public in the past and done well by investors, they have a track record. That gives a lot of comfort to investors. And then, as we were just talking about, people now look at the political risk as well. I think those are the key things. There's some technical issues around financial reporting and whatnot, but those are the key deal breakers or makers.
You were saying that some exciting things coming out of the Indaba. What has stood out the most for you?
Well, I think there is a general excitement again. I think commodities, by their nature, are cyclical, and the gold price has come back up in the last month or so, and so there's a lot of excitement around gold properties. I think there's some suggestion that diamonds are going to become more interesting again, so there's a bit of buzz there. There's certainly a buzz around rare earths. And and the base metal prices have been coming back up. So I think it's not euphoric, but I think people are optimistic.
I want to talk about Xstrata and Glencore. I cannot let you go without talking a little bit about that. How do you think that's going to change dynamics with these two coming together now?
Well, on one hand, I mean, people have anticipated that this is going to happen for some time. So on one hand, it's not a surprise. On the other hand, it is creating another major player in the industry. And probably, as your previous guest was talking about, there's certainly speculation about what's next for the combined company. But I think it also will, some of the other sort of medium-sized majors may now take a look around and see whether there needs to be more consolidation. So I think what is likely to happen out of this is that there will be more M&A activity.